Good afternoon, everybody. The webinar will begin very shortly. We're just going to take a couple of moments while everybody joins the call. Okay, I can see we've got people joining the call. So a very big welcome from me. It's the afternoon here in London, but I know we have people coming from all different countries. So good morning or good afternoon. It might even be good evening where you are joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us today in our webinar where we're going to be talking about how to tackle the most common cyber threats that governments around the world are facing. I'm Siobhan Bonita. I'm a former UK civil servant, and I'm delighted to be chairing this webinar on behalf of Global Government Forum. We work with civil servants in countries all around the world. In terms of today's topic, the cyber security threats that are faced by governments are always evolving, with criminals and bad actors constantly trying to exploit vulnerabilities in government systems to compromise how those services to the public are delivered. And across the world, governments are working together to identify and neutralize those threats, with many countries, as we'll see today, having set up cybersecurity agencies who often work together to try and identify and address the most common and significant threats that they are facing. So in today's conversation, we're going to be sharing insights from our three great experts on how governments are trying to keep ahead of these threats, including what kind of things they're putting in place, protective controls, changing their systems, improving their own and their supply chain security. We have three fantastic speakers with us here today, and in a moment I'm going to be introducing them, and then we will get into a conversation. I've got a few questions for our three experts, but I really do want this to be a conversation with you, our audience, as well. So we're going to try and make it as interactive as we possibly can. So whichever device you are using to join this webinar, you should see somewhere on your screen that there's a Q&A button. Please use that Q&A button at any point from now on. Don't wait until the end necessarily, but at any point to message in any comments that you have when our panelists are speaking, or any questions that you would like to put to our panel. And we'll get through as many of those questions as we can before the end of our webinar. So in terms of our three great speakers today, we have Taco Mulder, who is at the Centre for Cybersecurity in Belgium. And Taco has previously held a number of Chief Information Security, so CISO posts across the federal public services in Belgium. He's also worked across the private and not-for-profit sectors. And before joining the federal public service, he was also Chief Information Security Officer for public hospitals in Brussels. And in addition to his kind of professional formal positions, Taco coordinated the Cybersecurity and Healthcare Group at the Cybersecurity Coalition in 2022, and he's an active coach in the Women for Cyber program. So great to have you with us here today, Taco. Then, and you might not be able to see him yet on your screen because he's having some connection issues. So at the moment, his video is off, but he might be able, there we go, there we go. Hi, Janne. So we've got Janne Alonen, who is the Deputy Cyber Security Director at the Office of the National Cyber Security, which sits within the Ministry of Transport and Communications in Finland. The office maintains an up-to-date cross-administrative situation picture for the government, its ministries, and their senior management to help them support decision making. And Janne was previously head of unit at the Computer Emergency Response Team in the Finnish Transport and Communications Agency. He also holds a Bachelor of Police Services, so he worked as a senior constable at Helsinki Police Department and has served in crisis management roles in Kosovo and Afghanistan. And then last but by no means least, we have Martin Albert Hoff, who has led the Norwegian National Cybersecurity Centre since August 2023 and is a department director at the National Security Authority. Martin's gained cyber IT and policy education and insights from Norway, Germany, Singapore, and UN institutions, and he has work experience from security in Germany's energy sector, as well as 15 years in the armed forces, where he established, developed, and led several units within cyber. And before joining the National Security Authority, Martin led the security work that was linked to the digital transformation of the municipality of Oslo. So I'm sure you'll agree with me. It's great. We have three fantastic speakers and they all bring slightly different perspectives to our conversation today. As I say to the audience, please don't wait until the end. Send in any comments and questions you have as we go through. And even if you can't see Janne on your screen, Janne is there and will be a full part of our conversation. So my question I think I'm going to come to you first, Taka, if that's all right, to kick the conversation off. But I think just to set the scene, it will be great to hear from you and then from Martin and Janne, just a little bit about your centre. So for example, how long has it been in operation? How many people work there? But also, what's your centre's relationship with the rest of the government? So how do you work with other departments across the government in Belgium? Taco, I'll come to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Siobhan. So the Center for Cybersecurity Belgium, now we're having our 10th anniversary and is composed of a couple of departments that basically support the whole of Belgium. So we're not focused just on governmental entities. That's one of the 18 sectors that we cover. We cover it through, we have our CERT BE, so cyber emergency response team that are in the first line of giving support. Then we have our CITRIS, Cyber Threat Research and Intelligence, NCCBE, who are looking more at the supporting the economy with budgets from the EU. There's a staff department and all together. And then there's the NCAA, the National Cybersecurity Certification Authority, in which I'm working at the moment. So the support is to the whole of the Belgium economy and state. With our expertise, we're a little over 100 people at the CCB. And in my previous role, I worked more as the CISO for the federal entity. So that was really the governmental environment.
Brilliant, Taco. Thank you so much. And we'll do a bit of a comparison then as I go around to Martin and then Janne of how the other centres compare to that. So Martin, coming over to you similarly, could you tell us a little bit about the centre? So it sits within the National Security Authority, but does it have a similar function to what Taco was describing there?
So yeah, we have existed since 2019, and we also have a history further back than that, developing from the Norwegian CERT function. But today we say our main mission is to increase the digital resilience of Norway. And we have different types of tasks spanning from very technical tasks, but also to more on the policy level. We say that we work towards preventing cyber incidents from happening, but also we are working and having a function for detecting cyber incidents and also handling cyber incidents. We also have a role in putting together and keeping an updated situational awareness, what is happening in cyberspace. Collecting information, analyzing information, so on, but also distributing this information so that the country itself has a good situational awareness. But maybe one of the main tasks is holding the national response function, having the overview, the overarching function in Norway. What may be of interest is that we, as part of the National Security Authority, we report to the Ministry of Justice, but also to the Ministry of Defense. That means we have one foot firmly planted in both the civilian sector and also the military sector. And that is also very clearly visible when we are talking about the incident handling and in my opinion, I would say that's very important because you know, a cyber operation, they don't know any borders across countries, but also across sectors. That's a man-made construct, so to say, that you disregard when it comes to cyber operations, and that is why also the cooperation across ministries is very important. And in Norway, we have, I think it's 17 ministries. And in 15 of those ministries, we have established what we call a sectorial CERT, which handle their sector, which we then, of course, work closely together with.
Brilliant, thanks, Martin. And Taco, does your centre have the response function as well?
Yes, that's in the CERT environment, but it is and that is in close cooperation with the Federal Computer Crime Unit.
Right.
From the police in the response, but seeing the size of the task, we also work a lot with private companies to support this endeavor.
Yeah, thanks. So really interesting already from the two of you, that importance of collaboration, working across departments, but also across sectors. And as you say, for the bad actors, they don't care where those silos are. So it's kind of a whole system approach needed. Janne, I'm going to come to you as well. Similar question. Could you tell us a little bit about your centre? Because interesting, you sit in the Ministry for Transport, am I right?
Yes, thank you, Shaban. And you actually described pretty well already in the introduction phase. But I have to agree with Taco and my Norwegian colleague that it sounds very similar especially on the CERT side, what kind of activities Belgians have and Norwegians have, and I bet it's a pretty same in Finland as well. There might be a little bit differences, but coming to my new job, and I do apologize already if there are background sounds or my connection will be lost because I'm at the airport in Rovaniemi. So greetings from here, the home of Santa Claus, to everyone. But coming back to the question, our office was founded 2020 based on the Finland's second national cybersecurity strategy, and starting with only the director's role, but we've expanded a few years later on with new roles. But you could more generally say that our main task is to support the whole government level in all cyber topics and give a little bit foresight, help decision making, prepare them to be ready at all times. And this includes the President of Finland and the Prime Minister of Finland.
Right.
So we are kind of balancing a little bit in between the political, the strategical, and the operational level of cyber.
Yeah.
To keep it short. And yes, we are located within the Ministry of Transport and Communications, but that is purely a strategical location because it suits the best in that ministry. And we are straight under the Chief of Staff of Transport and Communications Ministry.
Yeah.
But working cross-governmentally.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. I think what's interesting there as well is you're relatively, Taco, you said you've been there for 10 years, your centre, but Janne and Martin younger in terms of the establishment. So interesting how much this has grown. It's just, I guess, shows how important this issue has become so quickly as well. You all mentioned there the work that you do then strategically in terms of advice across the government. So the second question that I want to put to all of you is, and I know you can't go into detail on some of these issues, that's entirely clear, and our audience will understand that our audience will be public servants and civil servants, but can you give us kind of a bit of an overview of the changing nature of the threats that we are seeing to governments. And I guess in particular, maybe the role that new technologies are playing in some of those new threats that we are seeing, because the question of AI, for example, often comes up when we're talking about cyber threats. But just in general, could you tell us a bit about how the threats and the nature of the threat, maybe the scale as well as the nature, has changed in the past 3 years? Where are you seeing those biggest threats now being? I'll change the order a little bit. Martin, I'll come to you first. And also, just before you answer, I think a couple of people in the audience have put their hands up. The way that Zoom is set up for the webinar, if you could, rather than put your hand up, because I can't come to you individually, if you have a comment, if you could put it in the Q&A, that would be fantastic, and we can make sure that we come to you. But Martin, this question about the changing nature of the threats facing governments.
Yeah, I think it's, I would say it's a huge question. But let me start with a phrase we often use here in Norway, and that is that we are one of the most digitalized countries in the world. And why I mention that is because that has something to do with the consequences of cyber incidents, cyber threats, cyber operations, and so on. So that is really important to have in the back of your head. And I would like to point out what the Norwegian Intelligence Service stated in a report released earlier this year, and that is they point out that Russia will conduct intelligence collection of cyber operations, but they will also conduct a cyber operation with the goal of pre-positioning for future digital sabotage. And that's also why I mentioned the digital dependencies that we have in Norway and of course in a lot of other countries, because the power of using a cyber operation toward others will increase as your dependency increases. And I would say that is one of my worries, the pre-positioning part. Intelligence operations, yeah, probably been going on for a long time, but it's not that visible. You don't see it. It doesn't hurt as much in the, at least not in the short term. But the pre-positioning and the sabotage part, that could really hurt a digitalized society. And so that is on the threat actor side, and this is public information. But when you also see towards technology, we are getting more and more dependent on technology, but from a defender perspective, it kind of makes it harder to defend as well, as you take into use a lot of different type of technology. The whole picture, the situation gets more complex, and as the complexity grows, I would also say it's harder to have a complete and holistic understanding of the vulnerabilities in those systems that then in turn, of course, exposes us. And the latest years when the war in Ukraine, I would say also that the whole geopolitical situation plays a huge role. Well, at least what we learn from Ukraine is that cyber is not only a standalone part, it's used also in warfare, it's used in influence in politics, and that is something we need to take into account also on the defender side. So that was only to mention a few things, but this is, as I said, a huge topic.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So really interesting what you're saying there, that as our societies and the way we deliver services, just the way we live becomes increasingly digital, that obviously opens up new vulnerabilities in terms of cyber threats. And then talking about the geopolitics over recent years and how cyber is being used, as you say, there for warfare, but also maybe to interfere in kind of political processes and in democratic processes as well. So you're talking there, I think, about the threats then from national players as well. So Janne, I'm going to come over to you because maybe I imagine in Finland some of that is very familiar for you as well, some of what Martin has just said.
Thank you. I agree with Martin. It's a big question, and we see similar things as Martin mentioned, but this is rather easy to answer also because it's not that long ago then the NCSC Finland and the Civil Intelligence Service gave out a mutual report that the threat level of Finland remains elevated, and this has been lastly updated in August 25. So, and the main reason behind this is the significant increase in so-called serious cases. And more generally, there are more and more data breaches, attempted intrusions, a lot of exploitation of vulnerabilities. But in particular, if you want to mention countries, we share a 1,300 kilometer eastern border with Russia, and yes, they are still a threat to us. And this has been said also with the intelligence services mouth, so to call. But it's not only Russia. There are Chinese actors. There are more and more sophisticated, targeted attacks rather than opportunistic attacks. So they are picking their targets more specifically, and that's the general continuity or progress of cyber attacks during recent years. There's also more diverse attacks. It's not only like it's the most common incidents like phishing, ransomware, malware, DDoS, different kind of scams. They're all on the rise, and it's like as you said that the technology is developing, and there's especially one thing with AI that we've seen and are a bit concerned about it, because you can now use it to turn your message into what language ever, and it's almost perfect, depending a little bit on the languages. But that is something that is currently being used, and on phishing and social engineering. You can generate convincing personalized phishing emails, or then the other thing is the deep fakes videos that can be done quite good at this moment. Imagine, I remember Mikko Hyppönen saying that imagine what technology was 20 years ago. For example, concerning cell phones, it was a big handle that you could carry with a big truck almost with you. And nowadays, everybody has a smartphone in their hand, which is a supercomputer. And that has happened only in 20 years. Imagine what technology brings within the next 20 years.
And I guess the challenge for the public sector is keeping up with that pace of change, trying to keep ahead, actually, of that pace of change. So, Janne, really...
that is something that I've worked my whole life with. As you said, I've been in the police at the beginning of my career, and it's always like that, that the bad guys run a little bit faster than the legislation or authorities keep up.
Yeah. So, Janne, interesting what you said there, building on what Martin said in terms of the types of threat and how it's changing. You also mentioning national actors. So in addition to Russia, you're mentioning China, for example, and others, but also some of that organized kind of criminal activity as well, getting smarter, getting more targeted. But just generally, all of those types of threats, the phishing kind of approaches, the scams, all being kind of amplified by new technologies and getting smarter and on the rise as well. And as you say, things like AI being able to change things into different languages, and the deep fakes that are virtually impossible for a person in the public to identify. So, so much going on there in the landscape. Taco, I am going to come to you, but Martin, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to come back on something that Janne had said?
Let Taco go first, and I'll get back to my topic.
So Taco, similarly, your thoughts on the changing nature of the threats. And I was just wondering as well if you could add, does new technology actually help government as well in terms of fighting some of these threats?
Yeah. So like Jan and Martin said, it is quite a large spectrum. The question, I even don't know if you're real, Siobhan, by the way. Anyway, so what we're looking is at there are some threats also on the internal side in getting people to understand the threats that we are facing, because what you see often in government, we're between the pressures of what is happening in our geopolitical level or criminal level, and the constant need for being more efficient and cutting costs. So that can have an impact on the history has an impact on the challenges from an internal part. When you look external, you were mentioning AI, but that is really, it enhances different types of attacks. We see a shift towards the geopolitical, but the usual gang of suspects, criminal gangs, etc., are still doing their stuff, either for financial gain or being used by state actors to enhance their attack capabilities. So it gets very complex, and especially you were mentioning a couple of countries, the attribution of attacks is very difficult. It is, you can only see it in the sense, okay, who is going to benefit from the crime?
Yeah.
But it's very hard to pinpoint. I mean, if somebody uses a drone to fly over an airbase, basically, is that geopolitical adversary, or is it maybe a drone vendor who wants to sell his technology? You know, so and I don't have an answer, but it makes it all very complex. And especially you were mentioning also with AI, what we see the AI being used in what we call the FIMIA, foreign information manipulation and interference. So that is the whole propaganda that you see, or marketing, what you see around, for example, when people talk about conscription to get armed forces up to level, you will see a lot of campaigns against that also, which is something we saw in the 70s and 60s also. It's nothing new, but the speed and the complexity are getting really very, very intense. And the whole digitalization, we want to also be a digital society, makes that the impact of such attacks on society are going to be very, very big. So it's a combination of all. So basically, I said a lot of words just to underline what Martin and Jan have said, I think.
No, Taco, that's great. As you say, the new technology is just really ramping up in terms of the scale, the speed, and the complexity of some of these threats and approaches. And as Martin was saying as well, you highlighted there the fact that we are now so digital that a big cyber attack can have a really huge impact, I think, on society. So certainly, I think lots for government to be dealing with. And obviously, government has, you know, all the pressures of other policies that they're dealing with limited resources. So this is a huge challenge. Martin, I am going to give you a chance to come in if you wanted to before we move. We've already got some questions from the audience, but you wanted to come in.
Yes. I'd like to add one thing that I think it fits into this topic, because we were talking about the changing nature of cyber, and especially towards the threats. And yes, we have talked about state actors, criminals, and also different methodology. But as Taco said, the impact part, I think it's really important to don't lose that one out of sight, because lately we have had some incidents that shows us how dependent we are on technology, the digitalization and everything. That's incidents that are not intended. For example, this week we had the Cloudflare incident. We had a few weeks ago, we had an Azure incident, an AWS incident. We had last summer, we had a CrowdStrike incident. All of those reported to be technical errors, but the impact also huge. So the thing with the digital dependencies, what kind of starts to look like more strategic dependencies. We are, of course, very dependent on the private sector, and I think it should be that way. But we need to be aware of the consequences when we put so many eggs into one basket, so to say. And I think it's hard to have that oversight overview before it actually happens. And again, I point back to the Cloudflare incident this week, as we saw a lot of web pages and services went offline.
Yeah, no, thanks, Martin. And we will come on to, I think, the relationship between the public and the private sector as well, in terms of our supply chains and how secure they are as well. So we'll come on to that in a mo. But I want to tell we've got a couple of questions coming in already. There's one from Cherno Jallo, who said, can a small country like the Gambia need an SOC under the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy? And what are the challenges of building a standard SOC? So this is, can small countries have a kind of dedicated cyber centre? Is that kind of credible and realistic? And should they have them? I think this is what the question is about. Taco, your thoughts on this? Or should smaller countries be kind of working together maybe on these issues?
Yeah, the working together, absolutely. But I think there's no reason why a smaller country cannot have. I mean, Belgium is not that big a country either. It's 11 million inhabitants. But the challenge is always finding, especially for public entities, to have a public SOC, because the salaries are not always the same as, for example, in a private SOC. But if you have the know-how, and I'm convinced every country has cyber know-how on one level or another, and otherwise, yes, you have to cooperate and do joint courses with other smaller countries. The way we are cooperating, for example, in the Benelux, is such a close cooperation. But there is absolutely no reason why a smaller country cannot have a security operations center. What is interesting, it should be also a little larger, I would suggest, make it also interlinked with emergency response teams and a knowledge center, because it's by increasing the maturity, the level of knowledge throughout the whole society, that you will support that. But a country, the example you were saying, the Gambia, there's no reason why they shouldn't have that or the capabilities to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Taco. Janne, did you have your hand up on this one?
Yes, I fully agree with Taco on this matter, and I'll still add a little bit that whether it's a SOC or a CERT or just a governmental function of either one of those, you have to lay a lot of work for that, or because it's based on trust on people, that they give information to you and they trust that you handle it correctly and give advice, help them. And a good example of is the Finnish CERT that has been already in use for 20 years or even more. And it's every year you build up trust and put your effort into that. So it's a lot of work. But yes, for sure. And a big thumbs up from my behalf that yes, there should be a governmental SOC or CERT in every country.
Thanks. Martin, are you in violent agreement with your two fellow speakers on this issue?
No, for the sake of the debate, I'm sorry that I can't say I'm in violent disagreement. I totally agree. Norway is also a small country. We have 5 million people living in Norway. Gambia is 2.7, but also compared with other European countries, Estonia have 1.5 million, but also have a CERT function. And I think it's important to have a coordinating function in a country, even if it's a small country. But I suppose that the role of cooperation with the private sector in the nation, but also in abroad with other countries, is maybe even more important when you are a small country.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I'm going to go to a question from Ben, and Janne, I know you've written a reply to this, but just so everyone can see, and I'm going to give Taco and Martin a chance to answer as well. So Ben Wooten has asked, what was the toughest incident you've come up against? What was it, and how long did it take to deal with? And Janne, you've said here there was a group hacking on the Parliament of Finland. So that's what you said was the toughest incident. And you said in there in your reply that it was very difficult to attribute this to a particular group, which is what you were saying, Taka, how hard it is to actually identify who's behind some of these. So any thoughts, Taka, have you got any examples to share of particularly difficult cyber attacks that you've had to deal with, or that you know your government have had to deal with?
Well, actually, it's basically what, and that is also tiring for teams. It's something that's constant, because if you look in Belgium, we have NATO, we have the EU. So there are a couple of institutions that are really what you call the flavor of the month, but not only this month. So it's basically prolonged. A challenging attacks. Well, the outages Martin was talking about, like CrowdStrike and so, have a huge impact and are challenging, but those are not the attacks that we consider as a real live hostile attack. What comes to mind is a couple of attacks on financial institutions that are constant, and that's also gain, of course. But just to pinpoint one is very hard, because it is basically a constant. It's a constant noise that is ongoing, and with focus shifting to different parts where attackers mean to find vulnerabilities.
Yeah, thanks. So it's like that accumulation, isn't it, of all of the going on?
And it just doesn't stop.
Yeah. Martin, did you have any particular examples?
The question was what was the toughest attack? I think it depends on the perspective. One can also say this most serious attack, and also for whom. In Norway, we had a couple of serious attacks the last 5 years on the Parliament, actually twice. And in the summer of 2023, we had the service organization for the ministries that were compromised. That was also a very serious attack. From my perspective, when it comes to the toughest, I would point out the ones that are enduring over time, that kind of tires out the people in the organization. We rely on the sectoral asserts that I mentioned earlier. They handle a lot of the incidents, but from my perspective, when we are in the fight, so to say, for a long time, that is really tiring on people, and that is tough, and it should also be planned for.
Yeah, it wears down the resilience, doesn't it, when it lasts a long time?
Yep.
We've got another question. Before I go on to some of my questions, we've got another question come in from Fanika, Chidakwa, who is from the Zambia, and has said, again, what do you view as the biggest threats from AI on cybersecurity? But also, I know we touched on AI already, but also, what gaps do you see in the law, either in your domestic countries or internationally, in responding to the effect of AI on cybersecurity? I guess this goes into what we were saying earlier about, are we behind? Are we a bit behind in terms of bringing in the right legislation, regulation that we need to deal with AI and its potential threats on kind of our security? Janne, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on AI in particular?
Yes, thank you. And as I said already, the language models and their benefits or use is a big threat in my mind, because that affects the people for the most part. But then, of course, there's also the part that AI might learn, or already is learning, to, for example, scan for weaknesses or gather intelligence, run simulations for adversaries, or search for open ports from or certain vulnerabilities that you can take advantage of. Of course, you have also good stuff that you can do with AI. Defend a little bit better, support real-time decision making, simulate attack scenarios, aiding in cyber exercises and stuff like that. But
Mm.
yes, there are.
Oh, Janne, we might have lost. Oh, no, you're back. Yep. No. Janne, we're going to come back to you in a moment. I think your reception is.
Concerning AI in my mind at the same time.
Thanks, Janne. We got almost all of that. I think the last 5 seconds we might have been cut off there. But Martin, do you want to add anything to what Janne said? So I think he's mentioning there the threats of AI, so in particular the kind of language issues around AI, how it can be smarter at kind of scanning across for vulnerabilities in your systems, but also bringing in the fact that AI can be used as a tool to help defend as well, so help boost our kind of toolkit in terms of defending our digital systems. Did you want to say anything more on AI?
I fully agree on what Jan is saying, but also to bring a new topic into this discussion is that when we take into use new technology, it's really important to understand what we are doing. We need to understand the technology itself, and if we at some point early on don't, we should be really careful on how we use the new technology. Start with something benign where we can't go wrong, so to say, because I'm also worried about adopting it too fast, and that itself is a risk that we unintentionally can have some major incidents by using AI because we don't understand how it is to be used in a proper way.
Thanks, Martin. And I think there is a risk, isn't there, that everybody wants to use AI. It's kind of the thing that everybody wants to use. They're quite excited about it. But as you say, you have to do it, make sure you do it in the safest and most secure way possible.
Start small and safe space. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of AI, just to underline that, but you have to do it in a proper way. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Taco, you're nodding there. Anything you want to add on the AI question?
Oh, that's the nice thing about this discussion. Jan and Martin already said it all. No, I've just to support what Martin was saying. The problem with, for example, AI, and I'll get also on the legal part in a second on the question, is the development of AI. Everybody thinks they know what they're working on, but a lot of people tend to believe that they know more than they really do. Which, if you look at your architecture, is a huge vulnerability, because it's nice to do that, but if you don't understand the concept of guardrails and don't understand your architecture, and in public service, not everybody knows because we've been building that architecture for years, you can have vulnerabilities. Also in the development of software, a lot of AI is developed through tools like GitHub, and which is fine, but even the developers themselves could potentially include attack code in their development. So it is, again, multipolar danger, but also opportunities, because without AI, we can't protect. If you look at hospitals, you're talking about millions of attacks a day. There's no human that can fight that. Huh? So it's AI against AI. So the maturity increase is also on the defenses side. But I think one of the major points is that most people don't understand exactly the security aspects and vulnerabilities. To come back on the point of the law, for example, in the EU, there's the AI Act. But I think there's more legal frameworks that are coming. But yes, like Martin and Janne was saying, we have a little issue that we're a little behind the progress. So for legal frameworks, it's interesting to think about the concept of what does the law need to achieve, rather than specifically on one technology or another. Seeing the speeds that you were talking about in the development, what Janne was mentioning, of so many years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in 5 or 10 years, we will be talking about new technology we don't have any idea about for the moment. So if we're working in a legal framework, we should take that into account, and more the spirit of the law than the letter of the law. And that's where there is always this big issue where but the law says this. No, but what is the law intended to do? So I would really encourage people who are writing the laws to think of that spirit of protection and not especially be blocked in what we consider now our newest tools.
Thanks. And Jana, you wanted to come in on what Taco was saying there.
Yes, I'll add one thing on the law side. I'm now talking from purely an operational side, because you cannot handle cyber by yourself. You have to have multiple authorities involved, and the legislation for them to exchange information on cyber issues. That is a critical part in my mind that you can solve or help.
Yeah, Nate, I think we've just lost you a tiny bit there again at the end, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying there at the beginning. And I noticed, I think, Rishi, if you're watching in the audience, please do put your comments in the questions, because I can see you're raising your hand, but I can't see your question unless you write it in the Q&A box for us. On that issue of kind of the spirit of doing things and the spirit of protecting and what we need to do, my next question to the three of you on the panel is, we have an audience here who are civil servants and public servants from different countries around the world. You sit in centres that help to monitor the threat, but also help to advise departments in terms of what they should be doing on cyber hygiene. So how confident are you that those messages reach civil servants and that they all understand what it is they should be doing? And are there any basic things that you think all staff across kind of the public sector, across government, should be doing? Are there things regularly that frustrate you that we're not doing, that civil servants aren't doing in terms of basic cyber hygiene? Martin, you're nodding. Taco, I can see you smiling, so there must be something. So Martin, I'll come to you first on this one.
My notion is that the message gets across to the different ministries and government organizations. I've been in cybersecurity since the last 25 years or so, and I see that it's a topic now in boardrooms at senior management level, and that's good. But it's not moving fast enough, I would say. And if I should just give one advice when it comes to implementing good cyber hygiene, is to start with the basic things. We are still talking about good passwords and change the passwords, the basics, and patching the systems. And I'm honestly getting really tired of advising on updating to the latest secure version. That should be unnecessary so that we can focus on the really serious stuff. But still in 2025, we are telling people to change their password, patch the systems, don't have equipment exposed on the internet if they're not supposed to be exposed to the internet, and so on.
Brilliant, thanks, Martin. So get the basics right, update your passwords, update your versions, make sure your system's patched in the way it should be. So all of those basics. And as you say, these are things we've been talking about for years, so they should really be being adhered to. Taco, any similar messages in terms of basic cyber hygiene? And do you think those messages are getting out across departments and the wider public sector, so kind of regions as well?
So everything Martin said is, we kind of recognize that, and then everything, MFA, we're trying to now to link also what's the awareness with their private situation, huh? Because if you're aware how it happens at home, at work, you might have a different approach. But yes, long passwords, changing your passwords, not using the same password everywhere are recurring points. Maybe it would be an idea, but now I'm just philosophizing to have like a driving license where you have to pass a couple of tests on information security hygiene before you're allowed to touch our systems. But it's that would be wishful thinking, and then it would be good to recheck that once in a while. It's not that if you have a driving license that you never get fined. So What I mean to say by that is, yes, we're facing that. There's also a fatigue that you have to deal with. People keep hearing those messages, but there's so much of that noise also that you have to try to be innovative in passing that message. What really helps, at least at the EU level, in as far as the law goes, is that we have the NIS2, the Network Information Security Law 2, which is for the whole EU, and a lot of countries outside of the EU adhere by the same idea. And the concept is basically just two sentences. The first one, accountability, is where it should be. So the head of a ministry, the civil service head of the ministry, is personally accountable for information security, so that it is done. So the accountability is very important because it's finally where it should be. And the second little sentence, resuming this too, is we're finally legally obliged to do what we should have already been doing. Like Martin was saying, this is not nuclear science. We're not doing something that is, it goes faster, it is more complex, but that's not on every level. But that maturity, we're now forcing it. And basically it's a catastrophe that you should be forcing it by law. We should already be doing it. But that is a little personal frustration. So thanks for the therapy.
Thanks, Jaco. I really like what you said there about there's a fatigue, I think, because people hear about this so much that maybe there's a fatigue. So how do you actually make sure it cuts through to people? But also really interesting, should we have a test on cyber hygiene? Because I think there are lots of people who maybe have been in the civil service for, years and years and years, and these things have come in and maybe somehow it's gone above them or whatever. So actually, is there kind of a need to ensure that people have understood some of this? Maybe there's an assumption that people have understood it when they haven't understood a lot of these things. So yeah, lots of food for thought there. Janne, your thoughts on, are there basic things that people should be doing that they're not doing?
Yes, I totally agree with Martin and Taco. They cleared the table already on on this matter, and usually it is a usability against security, and when you leave either one out, usually you are a victim of a cybercrime.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's getting the balance right, isn't it? That you have to put all the security in place, but still make sure the friction's not so great that the systems become
Yes,
very difficult for people to
exactly.
use. Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Okay, we still have time for a couple of questions. So if the audience have any other questions, now is your time to send them in. But I did want to come back as well to this issue of the relationship between the private sector and the public sector when it comes to security of our systems, because so many of government systems now rely obviously on partnerships with private sector suppliers. So I've asked you there about, are the messages getting out to our public servants and to departments? But also, I just want your thoughts, the three of you, on how can government ensure that all of those private sector partners that they work with that are so integrated in now into our systems and the way that we deliver services out to the public, are they fully aware of kind of the cyber issues? Are they fully aware of the vulnerabilities that they maybe are introducing into the supply chain? And how does government keep on top of that wider ecosystem? Janne, I will start with you, your thoughts on this one.
Oh, this is a big question, and I think in many countries, also in Finland, the majority of, for example, critical infrastructure is private or privately owned. If you imagine energy, telco, finance, healthcare, so on. So this makes the private sector, so to call, the lifeblood of national cybersecurity. But we've tried in Finland to tackle this risk with the so-called ISAC model. I think at least my colleagues here might know what I'm talking about, the information sharing and analysis centers that our NCSC has established. They include 16 sectors from the Finnish private sector, and there are big sectors like energy or telco, military, finance, and each of these ISACs is run by the private sector entity, and there is information sharing phenomena explaining, and even though there are rival companies in the same ISAC, they still are able to exchange information in a certain level, and that is something that I see that should be done even more and even more widely throughout the whole government. But the private sector is essential for us.
Thanks, Janne. So really stressing there, as you say, how much of our critical infrastructure in societies now is kind of managed and owned by the private sector. So how important it is that those systems are secure as well. And also you stressing there the need for, even where there is competition within some of those groups, as transparency really important, trust, I think, in terms of information sharing as well, really important, and just being open and honest with each other in terms of those systems and where some of the vulnerabilities might be. Martin, you're nodding there. So your thoughts on this? I think this is a really tricky area, isn't it? But so important that we get this right.
I fully agree. This is really important that we get this right. And in Norway, we have something similar that Janne talked about in Finland. We call it the partner network, where we have members who are part of critical infrastructure or providers of services to those companies. And one of our main tasks from the Norwegian National Cybersecurity Center is to ensure that the situational awareness is communicated, but also received and understood. And I think that's very important, because if you understand what is the situation, the geopolitical situation, what's the latest threats and vulnerabilities and so on, and in addition, you understand your role in the nation, what your role for example, critical infrastructure is it's easier for the company itself to understand what security measures has been taken. And my impression or my opinion is that we have a lot of companies that they don't understand how they fit into the larger picture, and I fully understand that, because nobody have told how dependent, for example, government organizations are on the services that maybe a very small company is providing to the government.
And that's then really a failure of the kind of procurement process, isn't it? And the contracts and the way that they are set up, because that risk should be identified at that stage of the process.
I think when it comes to the contracts with private or any organization, I think it should be clearly stated security should be part of the contract. We have a lot of different requirements, at least from the government side, when we are in an acquisition phase or contract phase, that it should be, for example, use green technology and so on. But we should also have requirements when it comes to security. I fully agree. Yeah.
Thanks, Martin. Taka, before I come to you, there's a comment, I think, which was a response to something that you said in the last question. So Steve Raymond has said, I think this is a response to your bringing up the issue of fatigue with some of these, the need to be on top of cyber issues. And he said, the organization that I work with has a cybersecurity system that deals with the issues just discussed, in particular, overload and tiredness of cybersecurity. And Steve says that his organization then gets regular updates and reminders about training and scoring on their ability to identify potential threats. So they do have that kind of training that you were saying, where people are tested on their ability to identify some of these issues. But it seems to be an ongoing, not a one-off kind of approach, which sounds interesting. But Taka, your thoughts then on the relationship with the private sector and how government can ensure that that wider ecosystem is secure as well.
What is you have to have those competence centers at government level, because some countries go very far in that private sector, which is totally understandable. But you should not lose all your internal knowledge. For us, it's very important to partnership with the private sector and with academia in our whole ecosystem, and the government is just a small part. You were saying about the procurement, that it's an issue there. The speed of security and security-related issues are much faster than procurement. So we can only, in new contracts, integrate the NIS2, for example. Or so we have those legal obligations slowly coming in, but we have a lot of contracts and partnerships that are already based on contracts that have been running before these issues came up. One important part also that is playing a ever increasing role is the part of sovereignty over our supply chain, being dependent on actors that could basically cut us off, put us on black if we don't agree on certain issues. So there's basically a constant revision and updating of the supply chain. The expectations of the supply chain, if I look at the NIS2, we have in Belgium the cyber fundamentals, imposes that the whole supply chain is at the same level as what you are supposed to be it small, medium, or important or essential. So there are ways of controlling the supply chain, and of course with audits and certifications. So it's a whole ecosystem of different means. But what our experience is that usually we're really working on partnerships and not just a supplier relationship. And that makes it also possible, because it might surprise you, we're not perfect either, is to have really dialogues with our supply chain and then coach each other basically to ever higher levels.
Yeah, and we're seeing that language, I think, of partnerships is becoming increasingly common, I think, as governments are going through their digital transformation programs. I think the sense of partnering with the private sector rather than them just being suppliers is something that we're hearing more and more of. Janne has just put a great comment in the chat to everybody, to the audience, saying great questions. I completely agree with that. If you have a final question to the audience, please do send it in now. But if not, my final question to the three of you on the panel is, you've all mentioned, I think, the kind of geopolitics, the changing nature of the threat. So my final question to all of you just is, are you seeing a change in the way your centres, for example, work with other centres around the world? Are there new kind of relationships forming? Are you doing more work internationally than you were before? How is that kind of international collaboration changing in light of the threats that you are seeing? Or have you always had good kind of international relations on these issues? I'm going to come to Janne first on this one, and this is my final question.
Yes, I don't see it changing internationally that much in the last years. I think inside the EU, Finland has always had good relationships with EU partners, and especially the Nordic countries. They are doing cooperation on a daily basis. I know that for sure on the operational level.
Yeah. So those
that's a key priority for us.
Yeah, nice. And beyond the EU, Janne, are you seeing any changes?
There are some new so-called leads that we are following and trying to get the even broader information exchange, because that's, in my opinion, the way to make a more secure cyber world.
Yeah, thanks. I think
to share information.
Thanks, Janne. I think Santa Claus might be interfering with your reception a tiny bit up there, but we caught the end of that the more information can be shared, I think, with kind of friendly countries, then the safer a system that we are creating. Martin, I'm going to come to you and then to Taco.
I totally agree with what Janne is saying. We had good cooperation across the borders for obviously decades, and because it's so important, and that is something one understood fairly early on. So yeah, and I also would like to emphasize what Janne says about the Nordic countries, really close cooperation and has had over time. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And then the final words to you, Taco, on any kind of changes you're seeing in international collaboration.
I think because we're kind of in a geek world, so the only people who understand us basically are our colleagues in other countries. Talking about the therapy I was talking before, but our cooperation, I don't see it changing. It maybe intensifies, but a lot depends also on the people because it stays in people business who you have. And if you see that some countries are shifting more to politicizing their systems, then maybe there will be a little less sharing also. So it all depends basically on the values that are common. And I think especially Benelux, Nordics, Germany, UK, we have values that we share. And there the intensity hasn't changed, but it's just evolving with the threats. But I don't see personally a very big change.
Thanks, Taco. I mean, a really nice point to end on there, I think, is it is about those people, the relationships, the human relationships, I think, with people and the values and those shared values. I think keeping things as safe as possible. Thank you so much. Oh, we have one question just come in from Mikael Mayer, who says, hello, bonjour. Would it be possible to get a copy of the transcript and summary? Just to say, Mikael, we will be sending to everybody who registered today, who joined live, and those who couldn't join live from different time zones. We will be sending you a link to the video so you can watch the video again, you can share it with your colleagues, and we will also be doing a write-up of today's conversation with the key points highlighted, and that will come to everybody who registered for today's webinar as well. So yes, Mikael, you will get all of that. I just want to say a huge thank you to Taco, to Martin, and to Janne. I really enjoyed that conversation. It's such serious topic that we're covering, but it was wonderful to do it in such an engaging way with the three of you today. Thank you so much for being on our panel. Thank you to the audience for sending in so many great questions. Really good to have that engagement from the audience. To the audience, we will have sent you a very short questionnaire. If you could take a couple of minutes just to fill that in, I would be hugely grateful. It means that here in Global Government Forum, we just make sure we give you webinars on the topics that are of most interest and importance to you. So I'd be really grateful if you could do that. But thank you so much to Janne, to Martin, and to Taco, and to all of you. Enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are, and I hope to see you on another webinar very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Goodbye.